Wait just a moment. His voice is velvety soft, and the gentle touch on her cheek sends her heart skipping a beat. Petals swirl around them like glowing confetti, and his intense, soul-piercing gaze promises forever. Stay with me. A sweet tremor runs through her body, butterflies exploding in her stomach, but the perfect dream shatters in a single brutal instant. Hey, get up! A harsh shout and the violent clang of metal bars rip her awake. She opens her eyes to damp stone walls and a freezing floor. Her fingers tremble as they brush the cold surface. One panicked question hammers in her mind. Am I in prison? She looks down, striped prison uniform. Panic claws at her throat. Why am I in prison? A sudden flash of memory hits like lightning. This is the novel she was reading, Pink Garden. She's Ileana, the villainess's sister, sentenced to rot in the infamous Drabround Fortress. Her heart freezes. In the deepest dungeon of this hellhole lies the cursed archduke, the male lead, chained with magical restraints that bite into his flesh, barely holding back the beast inside. Anyone who sees his true form will be torn apart like raw meat. The memory of the plot makes her blood run cold. Only the true heroine's kiss can tame him and break the curse. Everyone else is just prey. She's trapped in the same building as a monster. But days pass, and raw fear slowly gives way to survival instinct. Instead of curling up in despair, Ileana sits at a rough wooden table across from the prison guard, cards in her hands, a dangerous sparkle in her eyes. She slams her hand down. Full house! A triumphant, radiant grin spreads across her face. The guard clutches his head and yells, "No! How the hell?" She casually chews on the snacks she just won, completely relaxed. "This is a gift," she says slyly, sliding the winnings toward him. In this grim prison, she refuses to be just another prisoner. She's rewriting the rules. Night falls. Guided by a dim lantern, she descends into the forbidden depths. Each step echoes louder. The air grows heavier, colder. She hears distant chains rattling, and her skin prickles. Finally, she stands before a massive iron door. Inside, pitch-black darkness, broken only by heavy, ragged breathing. She steps forward. The lantern light falls on him, exhausted, chained, terrifyingly majestic. His eyes glow like coals in the dark. "Who are you, and why are you here?" His voice rumbles like falling stones. Terror floods her, but she doesn't run. Instead, she does the last thing anyone expects. She simply holds out the food. Their fingers brush. A spark shoots through her body. His hand closes over hers, strong, possessive. She feels his heat, his pain, his buried hope. "I'll keep your secret," she whispers. In that moment, staring into eyes full of torment and sudden fragile light, she knows her life in this story has just changed forever. Despite the raging blizzard howling outside the walls, Iana's cell radiated absolute comfort. She lounged amid a mountain of soft pillows and blankets, devouring a juicy steak with pure delight. Life in prison isn't actually that bad, she thought, eyes half closed in contentment. Thanks to her unbroken winning streak at cards, her cell had transformed into a gourmet warehouse. Piles of sweets, fresh fruit, and cuts of meat that other prisoners could only dream of. From the corridor came the guards' despairing groans. "She robbed us again! We lost our last coins!" Iana barely registered their misery. She savored the taste of victory until a sudden flash of the original plot resurfaced in her mind. She remembered the prisoners of Level 9, those locked away in the deepest bowels of Drabround. Curiosity and a strange pang of pity pushed her toward madness. Iana decided to visit the Empire's most dangerous inmate. The guard said he hasn't eaten for days. That's just cruel, she muttered, filling a small basket with food. With every step down the spiral staircase, the air grew colder, thicker. The lantern's light barely cut through the dense darkness. Iana shivered, her heart hammering in her throat. She reached the massive iron grate. From the shadows came a heavy, metallic clank. There, in the gloom, sat him, Archduke Ricardo. His body was wrapped in massive magical chains that glowed with a dim, ominous light. Iana froze, stunned by his appearance, gaunt, hair tangled, yet still hauntingly beautiful. She slowly reached through the bars, offering a piece of bread. Suddenly, the chains rattled violently. Ricardo lunged forward, his huge, burning hot palm clamped over her wrist. The grip was so powerful that Iana let out an involuntary gasp. She felt his feverish heat, his inhuman strength. His eyes flared in the darkness, blazing with rage mixed with endless pain. "Who are you?" His hoarse voice made her freeze in place. An electric jolt raced through her body from the contact. She realized her life now hung on a thread, yet for some reason she didn't want to run. Iana stood paralyzed, unable to move. Ricardo's grip on her wrist felt like red-hot tongues. His ragged breathing scorched her skin. "Why?" he rasped, his voice thick with distrust and veiled menace. He stared at the food in her hands as if it were poison, not salvation. "I just brought you dinner." Iana's voice trembled, but she forced herself to hold his gaze. His eyes reflected the fear and fury of a beast that had known nothing but pain for too long. She felt the magical chains around him begin to hum and vibrate in response to his surge of emotion. Slowly, Ricardo released her wrist. The sudden absence of his touch left a cold void on her skin. He fell upon the food with desperate hunger, pride forgotten. Watching this once majestic man eat straight from the floor, Iana felt a sharp pang in her chest. They treat him like an animal, the thought flashed through her mind. When the basket was empty, Ricardo grew still. His gaze cleared somewhat, though suspicion lingered. "What do you want in return? Gold? Freedom?" His question came out sharp. Iana only gave a sad smile, smoothing the hem of her dress. "Nothing, just eat on time," she replied softly. Then she turned and began climbing the stairs. Back in her cell, Iana couldn't fall asleep for a long time. The image of the chained Archduke haunted her. She understood that their meeting was no coincidence. The fate of the novel had begun to move. If I can tame this monster, maybe I won't just survive. Maybe I can change the ending of this story, she thought, finally drifting into restless sleep. The next morning, the prison was shaken by news an inspection from the capital would arrive at Drawbrown ahead of schedule. Iana realized her peaceful days of card games were over. The main villain, her brother, was drawing near. It was time to decide whose side she was on. Iana returns to her cell, her face glowing with happiness. She clutches a small pouch of gold coins, another winnings from the guards. "Today was an excellent haul," she whispers with satisfaction, savoring the musical clink of the coins. But her triumph is cut short by an unexpected visit. At the cell door stands the chief warden, his face pale, voice trembling. "Lady Iana, you have a visitor from the capital itself." Iana freezes. An inner voice tells her the carefree days are over. Down the corridor come confident footsteps, and before her appears a tall man in opulent clothing. It's her older brother, Cassian, the very main villain of the novel. His gaze is cold and piercing, radiating danger. "Iana, I hear you've made yourself quite comfortable here," he says with a thin, ironic smile. A chill runs down the girl's spine. She knows Cassian didn't come for a family reunion. He wants something. "Brother, what brings you to this swamp?" Iana tries to keep her voice steady, hiding the tremor in her hands. Cassian slowly surveys her luxury cell piled high with desserts. The emperor is displeased. He wants to know why the cursed archduke is still alive and why the magical chains have begun to weaken. Ayana's heart skips a beat. She realizes their nighttime visits with Ricardo never escaped the prison's magical surveillance. Cassian steps closer, leaning down until his face is almost touching hers. They say someone has been going down to the lower levels, someone who isn't afraid of the beast. Panic floods Ayana, but she only defiantly lifts her chin. Maybe it's just the ghosts of Drabrun, brother. Cassian lets out a low chuckle, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. I hope so, because if I find out you're playing with fire, I will personally extinguish that flame. When Cassian finally leaves, Ayana collapses onto the cushions, strength draining from her. Her breathing is ragged. She understands that now every step she takes will be watched. Yet the thought of hungry, wounded Ricardo in the depths below won't let her rest. She has to choose, save her own skin or risk everything for the monster who once gripped her hand with such desperate force. Ayana knows Cassian isn't bluffing. Every moment is under surveillance now. Still, the fear for Ricardo burns stronger than the instinct for self-preservation. If I don't go tonight, he'll think I abandoned him. The thought sears her from within. Waiting until the guards change shifts and her brother heads off to feast with the commandant, Ayana once again slips out of her cell. This time she moves without a lantern, feeling her way in complete darkness to avoid betraying herself with light. Descending into the icy blackness of the 9th sector, she hears not only the clank of chains, but also a ragged, painful cough. Ricardo has gotten worse. "You're here again." His voice is very weak now, yet the old fury is gone. He had been waiting for her. Ayana presses herself against the cold bars. "Quiet, my brother is in the prison. If he finds out, we're both dead." She passes him a small vial of expensive medicine she traded part of her gold for with the prison physician. Their fingers meet again. This time, Ricardo's touch is gentle, almost pleading. He draws her hand to his face, and Ayana feels the heat of his breath against her palm. "Why are you doing this? I'm a monster meant to destroy this world," he whispers, and in his eyes, accustomed to darkness, something like tears glimmers. In this world, everyone chooses who they want to be, Ayana murmurs, stroking his tangled hair, ignoring the hum of the magical shackles. In that moment, a bond forms between them stronger than any curse. But suddenly, a heavy thud echoes from above. Cassian's iron-shod boots strike the stone stairs. Torchlight rushes downward. Ricardo sharply pushes Ayana into the shadows. "Run, now!" Her heart leaps into her throat. She barely manages to slip into a narrow side passage before her brother bursts into the dungeon. Cassian stops in front of Ricardo's cell, sniffing the air suspiciously. The scent of medicine and another's presence still lingers. His gaze drops to the floor. There lies the silk ribbon Ayana dropped from her hair. He slowly picks it up, and a sinister smile spreads across his face. "Got you, little sister." Cassian slowly winds the found ribbon around his finger, and his laughter echoes through the vaulted dungeon. Ricardo in his cell only growls hoarsely, straining against the chains, but the villain doesn't even glance at him. His true prey has suddenly become far more interesting. Ayana, holding her breath in the narrow passage, feels icy sweat trickling down her back. She understands, if she steps out now, it's over. The moment Cassian leaves, Ayana rushes back to her cell, trying not to make the slightest sound. Her heart pounds so violently, it feels as though the entire prison can hear it. She barely manages to dive under the blanket and pretend to be asleep when the door flies open. Her brother enters. He doesn't shout, doesn't threaten. He simply sits on the edge of her bed and silently places the ribbon on her pillow. That single gesture terrifies her more than any scream ever could. "You've always been a terrible actress, Ayana. Cassian says in an ice-cold voice. He makes it perfectly clear. He knows everything. But instead of sending her straight to the executioner's block, he offers a deal. It turns out the magical chains binding Ricardo feed on the life force of anyone who comes near. Cassian wants Iana to become the battery for those shackles, slowly draining her vitality to keep the Archduke firmly restrained. The next morning, Iana's life turns into a waking nightmare. The delicacies disappear. The guards who once lost fortunes to her at cards now look at her either with pity or cruel satisfaction. She can feel her strength leaving her body. The chains have begun siphoning her life through the magical connection that formed during their secret meetings. Yet Iana refuses to break. Even pale and weak, she finds a way to smuggle a note to Ricardo through one of the bribed guards. Only a few words. "Don't give in. I'll find a way out." She understands her plan for a quiet, comfortable survival has collapsed. Now it is war. Meanwhile, deep below, Ricardo feels a strange, pure surge of power mingling with his rage. He realizes Iana is suffering because of him, and that realization makes his curse begin to mutate. His eyes, once burning crimson, start to glow with golden light. For the first time, a hairline crack appears in the magical shackles. Iana's condition deteriorates with every passing hour. She sits in her cell pale as death, her once bright eyes dulled. The magical link works like a parasite. Cassian watches with satisfaction as his sister's energy keeps the chains intact far below. "You chose this role yourself, little sister. Be useful until the very end," he says casually before leaving for yet another council meeting. But something no one anticipated begins to happen in the depths. Ricardo, sensing how Iana's very life force is being funneled into his chains, refuses to accept it. Fury explodes inside him at the realization that his salvation is costing her life. His roar shakes the very foundations of Drabrun Fortress. "I won't let you die for me," he bellows. His body begins to transform. A black aura envelops him. The magical chains glow hot white. Deliberately, Ricardo redirects every ounce of accumulated power not towards suppressing the curse, but towards shattering the prison itself. The roar is deafening, as though an earthquake has begun. High above, Cassian rushes into the corridor in horror, realizing the situation is spiraling out of control. At that very moment, Iana gathers her last remnants of strength and makes her move. She knows the secret of the novel. The chains are not broken by a kiss of true love, but absolute willingness to sacrifice oneself. With trembling fingers, she finds a sharp shard in her cell, and despite her weakness, she draws a protective sigil on the floor, one meant to reverse the flow of energy back toward Ricardo. A blinding flash of light floods the entire dungeon. In the central hall of the prison, the great chandelier crashes to the ground. Deep fissures race across the walls. Iana loses consciousness, but right before darkness claims her completely, she hears the unmistakable sound of shattering metal. Not just one chain, an ancient barrier has collapsed. When the dust finally settles, a shadow appears at the threshold of her cell. It is no longer the gaunt, broken prisoner. It is Ricardo in his true, terrifying majesty, eyes blazing pure gold. Very gently, he lifts Iana into his arms and presses her against his chest. In that instant, the whole of Drabrun freezes in terror. The beast is free, and the only thing that matters to him now is the life of the girl who dared to reach out her hand to a monster. Ricardo stands amid the ruins of his cell, his aura so overwhelming it crushes every living thing within several floors. The guards, who just seconds earlier had been full of grim determination, now drop their weapons in sheer terror and flee without looking back. The Archduke pays them no attention at all. His gaze is locked on the pale, nearly lifeless Iana cradled in his arms. Suddenly, Cassian steps into his path. The smug smirk has vanished from his brother's face, replaced by pure, glacial fury, and the raw fear of realizing the puppet he thought he controlled has become something far worse. "You made a mistake, monster. You killed her when you broke the link." Cassian roars, drawing a blazing magical blade. The air around him crackles with concentrated power. But Ricardo simply takes one step forward. Frost instantly coats the ground beneath Cassian's boots. "Step aside, or this prison becomes your tomb." Ricardo's voice rumbles, not human anymore, but the deep growl of the abyss itself. He can feel Ayana's life slipping away with every heartbeat. Each wasted second is driving him mad. Cassian lunges. Ricardo doesn't even bother to dodge. He simply releases a fraction of his cursed power, an invisible battering ram that slams Cassian backward, smashing him straight through the stone wall. The path is clear. Ricardo carries Ayana up to the surface. A howling blizzard lashes his face, but he feels no cold, only the burning need to save the one who saved him. He brings her to a hidden grotto deep in the forest, a place he knew long before his imprisonment. Laying her gently on the smooth stone ledge, he faces a terrible truth. His curse didn't vanish. It has only changed shape. To bring Ayana back from the brink, he must give her a piece of his own heart, the core of his demonic power. Ayana lets out the faintest moan. Her lashes tremble. Ricardo leans over her, golden eyes glowing softly in the dimness of the cave. He understands what this choice means. If he does it, he becomes vulnerable for the first time in centuries, and Ayana will be forever bound to him by dark, unbreakable threads. Yet he doesn't hesitate. He places his palm over her chest. Thick crimson gold light begins to flow between them. The scarlet gold radiance floods the grotto, weaving their souls into a single knot. Ayana gasps sharply, eyes flying open as inhuman heat races through her veins. She sees Ricardo's face twisted in agony. He is literally tearing away part of his own essence to fill the emptiness inside her. In that instant, she understands. They are no longer merely allies, they now share one life. When the light finally fades, Ayana feels a strange, pulsing power thrumming inside her chest. She is no longer the weak battery. She has become part of the very curse everyone once feared. Ricardo sinks heavily beside her, breathing hard, the golden fire in his eyes dimmed to embers. Why would you take such a risk?" she whispers, touching his face with trembling fingers. He manages only a faint, exhausted smile. "You fed me when I was nothing but a beast. I give you life when you became a shadow." But the moment of fragile peace shatters almost immediately. From outside comes the thunder of hundreds of hooves and barked military commands. "Surround the grotto, no survivors." Cassian is alive. He has brought the Emperor's elite punitive force. The forest blazes with hundreds of torches. Inquisitor mages are already weaving the spell of cleansing flame, ready to burn every living thing inside the cave to ash. Ayana rises to her feet. She feels the power Ricardo gave her awakening fully within her. This is no longer the frightened girl who was isekai'd into a novel. She looks down at her hands. Black sparks dance around her fingers like living shadows. "Ricardo, rest," she says in a tone that allows no argument. "Now it's my turn to protect our ending." She steps out of the grotto to face the army. Cassian, seeing her, freezes in the saddle. He had expected to find his dying sister. Instead, a woman stands before him, radiating the aura of an ancient terror. "Surrender, Ayana. You've been defiled by the monster's magic," he shouts, but his voice trembles. Ayana makes a small, almost casual gesture with her hand. The ground beneath the guard's feet erupts, razor-sharp stone spikes bursting upward in a deadly forest. She knows there is no way back now. She and Ricardo have officially become the true antagonists of this story. With a defiant, almost playful smile, she meets her brother's eyes. "Brother,
You always said I was a terrible actress. Well, it's time I played the role you forced on me.